The last rays of the Texas sun filtered through the grimy windows of Reynolds Auto Repair. Dust particles danced in the beams of light that stretched across the worn concrete floor. Michael Mike Reynolds wiped his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of grease that joined several others. At 35, the lines around his eyes told stories of both laughter and hardship. That should do it, Mrs. Morales. The timing belt's replaced, but that transmission is going to need work soon. Not today, but start saving if you can. The middle-aged woman clutched her purse tightly. How much do I owe you today, Mike? Mike glanced at the invoice in his hand, then at the car seat in the back of Mrs. Morales's car, a reminder of mouths to feed at home. Let's call it 200 even. You can pay the rest when you get your tax return. Relief washed over Mrs. Morales's face. You're a good man, Mike Reynolds. Your little Emma's lucky to have you. Mike smiled, but there was a shadow behind his eyes. We take care of each other. That's all. As Mrs. Morales drove away, Carlos, Mike's part-time helper, shook his head. Boss, you can't keep cutting prices. That was at least 300 in parts and labor. She's got 3 kids and her husband's disability check barely covers rent. Besides, she brings us cookies at Christmas. Carlos laughed. Can't pay the electric bill with cookies, Jefe. No, but some things matter more than money. Mike glanced at the stack of bills in the office. The red final notice stamps were becoming all too familiar. 5 years since Sarah's cancer took her, and the medical bills still haunted him like ghosts. The aggressive treatments had drained their savings, maxed out their insurance, and still hadn't been enough to save her. The memory of her final days in the hospital, pale and thin, but still smiling whenever Emma came to visit, was etched into his soul. The small shop had been their dream once. They'd met at a classic car show where Mike was showcasing a '67 Mustang he'd restored. Sarah, with her marketing degree and infectious enthusiasm, had seen something in the quiet mechanic with grease-stained hands. Together, they'd saved every penny, worked extra jobs, and finally scraped together enough for a down payment on this place. Now it was Mike's lifeline, a place where he could use his hands to fix what was broken, even if he couldn't fix everything in his own life. The garage wasn't much, but it was honest work that put food on the table for Emma. Most days that was enough. You heading out? Yeah, Maria's making enchiladas tonight. You and Emma should come over sometime. Mike nodded, knowing he probably wouldn't take up the offer. Since Sarah died, social invitations had become exercises in polite refusal. Maybe next time. You go on home. As the garage fell silent, Mike moved through his closing routine. Check the locks, turn off the compressor. Make sure the invoice book was updated. Small rituals that brought order to a chaotic world. Through the small office window, he could see the framed photo of Emma, now 12, with her gap-toothed smile in Sarah's eyes. The calendar on the wall showed 3 overdue mortgage payments marked in red. Next to it hung the business license with both their names on it, Reynolds Auto Repair, Michael and Sarah Reynolds. He'd never had the heart to change it. Sometimes customers still asked about her, and those moments still cut deep. He'd built a reputation for honesty and fair prices, just as they'd planned together. But the financial reality was becoming harder to ignore. 2 other independent garages in the area had already closed, unable to compete with the big chain operations that offered cheap, quick service with parts from who knows where. The phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. It was Mrs. Peterson from next door. Emma's fine. Just wanted to let you know she finished her homework and had dinner. She's reading now, waiting for you. Thanks, Dorothy. I'll be home in 30 minutes. Just closing up. Take your time, dear. That girl of yours is a treasure. Mike smiled. That she is. After hanging up, he turned off the main lights, leaving only the small security lamp that cast long shadows across the tools and lifts. The garage at night had a peaceful quality, like a sanctuary of mechanical order. Every tool in its place, every problem solvable with the right knowledge and patience. As he stepped outside, the warm Texas night enveloped him. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and the distant hum of the highway provided a constant backdrop to the neighborhood sounds. Mike locked the main door, testing it twice as he always did. That's when he heard it, a soft sound carried on the evening breeze. At first, he thought it might be a stray cat or the wind playing tricks. But as he listened more carefully, the sound took shape. Someone was crying. Following the sound, Mike walked around the corner of his shop and down the side street. About 50 yards away, a sleek black car sat awkwardly by the curb, tilted at an unnatural angle. The front driver's side tire was completely flat, the rim nearly touching the pavement. Next to it stood a young woman, perhaps 19 or 20, her shoulders shaking as she spoke frantically into her phone. As Mike approached, he could see tears streaming down her face in the glow of the streetlight. Her designer clothes in the luxury car suggested she came from money, but in this moment, she looked as vulnerable as anyone he'd ever seen. "No, Mom, I can't just wait here all night. There were these men in a truck and they kept following me, and I had to take this side street to lose them. And now I've got a flat tire and I'm stuck here alone." Mike slowed his approach, not wanting to startle her. He cleared his throat gently. "Need some help with that tire?" The young woman spun around, her eyes wide with fear. Mike raised his hands slightly, palms forward, to show he meant no harm. The grease-stained Reynolds Auto Repair logo on his shirt seemed to ease her tension slightly. "I'm Mike. I own the garage just around the corner. Couldn't help but notice you've got a flat." The woman wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. "I've been trying to reach someone to help. My mom's in a meeting, and the roadside assistant said it would be at least 2 hours, and I can't." Her voice broke as fresh tears threatened to spill. "It's okay. I can help you get back on the road in about 15 minutes. Mike's voice was calm, steady. "You mentioned someone was following you?" The girl nodded, glancing nervously down the empty street. "A pickup truck, 2 men. They started following me after I left the campus library. I took a few random turns, but they stayed behind me. When I turned down this street, I hit something and—" She gestured helplessly at the flat tire. Mike's jaw tightened. "Well, you're not alone anymore. I'm going to fix this tire and then you can be on your way. What's your name?" Olivia Morrison." Mike nodded and moved toward the trunk of her car. "You have a spare in here?" Olivia pressed a button on her key fob, and the trunk opened with a soft click. "Yes, I think so. My mom made sure the car had all the emergency equipment when she bought it for me." Mike found the spare tire, jack, and lug wrench neatly arranged in the trunk compartment. "This is good. You've got everything we need." He pulled out the equipment and knelt beside the damaged tire. The car was a late-model luxury sedan, a Mercedes S-Class with all the trimmings, he noted, that probably cost more than Mike would make in 3 years. Yet at this moment, it was just another vehicle with a simple problem he could fix. The 19-inch alloy wheel had a deep gash in it where it had struck something hard, and the run-flat tire, despite its reinforced sidewall, had given up the fight. Modern technology was impressive, but physics always won in the end. As Mike positioned the jack beneath the car's frame, carefully locating the manufacturer's jack point to avoid damaging the undercarriage, he noticed Olivia watching him intently, her phone still clutched in her hand. Sometimes even the fanciest cars need a regular mechanic's hands to get them back on the road. A hint of a smile crossed her face as she wiped away the last of her tears. With practiced efficiency, Mike loosened the lug nuts before jacking up the car. His movements were precise and confident, the result of thousands of similar repairs over the years. The 5-pointed star pattern of the lug nuts was familiar territory, though the special locking nut required the adapter he found in the trunk's toolkit. As he worked, he kept up a gentle conversation, partly to distract Olivia from her fear, and partly because talking through the process was second nature to him when Emma was around. "Always loosen the nuts before you jack up the car. Gives you better leverage. Then once it's up, you can take them off completely." Olivia nodded, seeming to appreciate the distraction of the impromptu lesson. "My dad used to work on cars when I was little, before he died." Mike looked up briefly. "I'm sorry about your dad. It was a long time ago. I was 14. The shared understanding of loss passed silently between them as Mike removed the damaged tire. He examined the sidewall and found a large gash. "Looks like you ran over something sharp. Probably happened when you were making those quick turns." Olivia hugged herself against the evening chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "They kept getting closer no matter how many turns I made. I don't even know who they were or what they wanted." Mike's expression darkened as he mounted the spare tire. Some people see a young woman alone in an expensive car and think she's an easy target. You did the right thing getting away from them. He tightened the lug nuts in a star pattern, making sure the wheel was properly seated. Each nut needed to be tightened to about 110 foot-pounds of torque, but without his torque wrench, he relied on the feel developed over decades of work. Too loose and the wheel could come off, too tight and you could strip the threads or even break a stud. It was a balance that machines couldn't always get right, but experienced hands knew by feel. My dad always told me that if I ever felt unsafe while driving, I should head to a police station. But I got so turned around, and then the tire. Mike lowered the car and gave the lug nuts a final tightening. That's good advice, but you're safe now, and you'll be on your way in just a minute. He stood and dusted off his hands on his jeans. The spare's on tight. It's not meant for long-term use, so you'll want to get a proper replacement tomorrow. If you need help with that, my shop is just around the corner. Reynolds Auto Repair. Olivia's relief was palpable. I don't know how to thank you. I was so scared. And then you just appeared like a guardian angel. The rumble of a powerful engine interrupted their conversation. Headlights swept over them as a black SUV pulled up behind Olivia's car. Mike instinctively stepped slightly in front of Olivia, his hand gripping the lug wrench tighter. His mind flashed to Emma, to what he would do if someone threatened her. The weight of the metal tool in his hand felt reassuring. The driver's door of the SUV opened, and a woman emerged. Even in the dim streetlight, her presence commanded attention. She was tall, perhaps in her early 50s, with sharp features and an elegance that seemed almost regal. Her tailored business suit and the way she surveyed the scene spoke of someone accustomed to authority. Her hair, dark with streaks of silver, was pulled back in a tight bun, emphasizing her high cheekbones and penetrating eyes. She moved with the confident grace of someone who knew exactly how much space she occupied in the world and expected others to accommodate accordingly. Olivia, the woman's voice carried both relief and concern. Mom! Olivia rushed forward. How did you find me? The woman embraced her daughter briefly, then held her at arm's length. Your car's GPS. When you called sounding so distressed, I had my assistant track your location. Are you hurt? No, I'm fine now. This man helped me. He fixed the flat tire. The woman's gaze shifted to Mike, taking in his grease-stained clothes and the lug wrench still in his hand. Her expression was unreadable, a mixture of gratitude and careful assessment. Mike had seen that look before. Wealthy clients evaluating whether he was trustworthy or just another mechanic looking to pad the bill. He'd learned not to take it personally. People who had a lot to lose often had a hard time trusting those who seemed to have nothing to take. You helped my daughter? Mike set down the lug wrench and wiped his hands on his jeans, suddenly aware of his appearance. She had a flat tire. I was just closing up my shop when I heard her. The woman approached, her movements precise and measured. I'm Diana Morrison. And you are? Mike Reynolds. I own Reynolds Auto Repair just around the corner. Diana's eyes narrowed slightly at the mention of his name, as though filing it away for future reference. Olivia told me some men were following her? Mike nodded. That's what she said. By the time I found her, she was alone with the flat tire. Diana turned to her daughter. We'll file a report with the police. And from now on, I want you to use the driver service when you're out late. But Mom, no arguments, Olivia. Diana's tone made it clear the matter was settled. She turned back to Mike, her expression softening, almost imperceptibly. Mr. Reynolds, I appreciate your assistance. Most people would have walked on by. Mike shrugged, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. Anyone would have done the same. Diana's laugh was short and without humor. Mr. Reynolds, I've been in business long enough to know that's simply not true. Most people look the other way when someone needs help. Mike met her gaze steadily. I'm not most people. For a moment, Diana seemed taken aback by his directness. Then something shifted in her expression. A flicker of respect, perhaps. Behind her carefully constructed facade, Mike sensed something unexpected. A recognition, as though she'd found something rare and valuable when she wasn't even looking. No, I don't believe you are. She reached into her jacket and produced a business card. I'd like to thank you properly. Come to my office tomorrow. Mike took the card reluctantly. That's not necessary. I was just doing what's right. Diana smiled, a calculated expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. What's right and what's necessary are often the same thing, Mr. Reynolds. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. My assistant will be expecting you. Before Mike could protest further, Diana turned and guided Olivia toward the SUV. The younger woman looked back over her shoulder. Thank you again, Mr. Reynolds. Mike nodded, watching as both women climbed into the vehicle. The SUV pulled away smoothly, leaving him alone on the darkened street with a business card in his hand and the distinct feeling that his life had just taken an unexpected turn. The small house was quiet when Mike entered, save for the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. Mrs. Peterson had left a note on the counter. "Emma's asleep. Leftovers in the fridge. You work too hard, Mike." He smiled at the motherly concern. Dorothy Peterson had been a godsend after Sarah passed. The retired school teacher lived next door and had taken Emma under her wing, providing after-school care when Mike had to work late. She'd been there on the worst days, making sure Emma ate properly and got to school on time when Mike could barely function. He wasn't sure how he wouldn't have managed without her. The house itself was modest but clean, 3 bedrooms in a neighborhood that had seen better days, but was still holding on. They'd bought it when Emma was a baby, when the future seemed limitless. Now it felt both too empty without Sarah and too full of memories. Some nights Mike still woke up reaching for her, only to find cold sheets beside him. Mike moved quietly through the house, checking on Emma before settling at the kitchen table. His daughter slept peacefully, her science textbook still open beside her bed. She'd always been a good student, something she got from Sarah. Mike gently closed the book and pulled the blanket up to her shoulders. Sometimes when he looked at her, the resemblance to Sarah was so strong it took his breath away. Same determined chin, same curious eyes that seemed to take in everything. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, careful not to wake her. Growing up without a mother was hard enough. She deserved her rest. Back in the kitchen, Mike pulled out the business card Diana Morrison had given him. The embossed lettering caught the light. Diana Morrison, CEO, Morrison Luxury Group. Below was an address in downtown Dallas, in one of those gleaming skyscrapers Mike usually only saw from a distance. The card was thick, cream-colored stock with raised silver lettering, the kind of detail that spoke of serious money. He ran his thumb over the raised letters, considering. The Morrison name was familiar. Their company owned several high-end car dealerships in Texas, along with real estate and other ventures. He'd seen their billboards and occasionally worked on their vehicles when they came through local owners. Morrison Luxury Automotive was known for its exclusive clientele and showrooms that looked more like art galleries than car lots. They were major players, operating in a world far removed from his small garage. What could Diana Morrison possibly want with him? The cynical part of him wondered if this was just a rich person's gesture, inviting him in to offer a token reward before sending him on his way. But there had been something in her eyes, an evaluating look that suggested more. He'd seen it before in customers who knew quality work when they saw it, who understood that not all skill came with fancy certificates or prestigious names. Mike set the card down and opened the refrigerator. The leftovers Mrs. Peterson mentioned were covered in plastic wrap with the note, "Eat this, Michael. You're too skinny." He smiled despite himself. Dorothy's casseroles had been another lifeline after Sarah died, when cooking for himself had seemed like an insurmountable task. As he ate, he considered his options. His shop was scheduled to be closed tomorrow for equipment maintenance. The lift needed servicing, and he had been planning to catch up on paperwork, the part of the business he always put off until absolutely necessary. He could go to this meeting, see what Diana Morrison wanted, and be done with it. Or he could ignore the invitation and continue with his life as it was. His eyes drifted to the pile of bills on the counter. The medical debt from Sarah's treatment, still over $40,000 despite 5 years of payments. Emma's school expenses. The public school was decent, but the extracurricular programs that kept her engaged cost extra. The mortgage, the garage's operating costs. The parts suppliers who were getting increasingly strict about payment terms. Each month was a careful balancing act, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Carlos was only getting 20 hours a week because Mike couldn't afford more help, even though the work was there. The equipment was aging, and the diagnostic computer was 2 generations behind what the dealerships used. He'd been putting off upgrades, making do with what he had, but that couldn't last forever. Not in an industry that changed as fast as automotive technology. Mike's gaze settled on a framed photo of Sarah, taken a year before her diagnosis. Her smile had always been his anchor. After she died, he'd made her a promise, that he would do whatever it took to give Emma a good life, that he would never stop trying to build a future they had planned together. Sarah had always been the dreamer between them, the one who saw possibilities where Mike saw obstacles. Take the chance, she would have said. What's the worst that could happen? Whatever Diana Morrison wanted, he owed it to his family to at least hear her out. Decision made, Mike finished his dinner and headed to bed, setting his alarm earlier than usual. If he was going downtown, he'd need to allow extra time and find something presentable to wear. The next morning, Mike woke to the smell of coffee brewing. He found Emma in the kitchen, carefully pouring a cup for him. "You're up early, pumpkin." Emma smiled, her gap-toothed grin a reminder that she was growing up too fast. "Mrs. Peterson said you came home super late. I wanted to make you breakfast." The simple gesture tightened Mike's throat. "Thanks, Em. You didn't have to do that." She shrugged, already pulling eggs from the refrigerator. "Dad, your good shirt is ironed. I did it last night before bed." Mike raised an eyebrow. "My good shirt?" Emma rolled her eyes in that particular way that only preteens could perfect. "I heard you talking to yourself last night about going downtown for a meeting. You always talk to yourself when you're nervous." Mike chuckled. "Busted. Yeah, I have a meeting with someone important." As they ate breakfast, Mike explained about Olivia and the flat tire, though he downplayed the part about the men following her. Emma listened intently, her eyes widening when he mentioned Diana Morrison. "The Diana Morrison? The one on the billboards? The one who owns like half of Dallas?" "I doubt she owns half of Dallas, but yes, that Diana Morrison. She wants to thank me for helping her daughter." Emma studied him with a seriousness beyond her years. "You're going, right?" "I'm thinking about it." "Dad." Emma set down her fork. "Remember what Mom always said? Opportunities don't knock twice." Mike's heart squeezed at the memory. Sarah had lived by that motto, always pushing them to take chances and to reach beyond what seemed possible. It was how they'd scraped together the money for the garage in the first place, how they'd managed to buy the house when everyone said they were overreaching. She'd never been reckless, but she understood that standing still was often riskier than moving forward. "Your mom was a wise woman. So you'll go?" Mike nodded, his decision confirmed. "Yeah, I'll go, though I'm not sure what good will come of it." Emma smiled. "Maybe something amazing." An hour later, Mike stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of his good shirt, a blue button-down that Sarah had bought him years ago for client meetings. It was slightly faded now, but still the best thing he owned. Paired with his least worn jeans and his only pair of non-work boots, it was as dressed up as he could manage. He'd even dug out the leather belt that didn't have tool marks on it. His reflection showed a man with weathered skin and calloused hands that no amount of scrubbing could completely clean of engine grease. The fine lines around his eyes had deepened in recent years, and there was a permanent furrow between his brows that hadn't been there when Sarah was alive. His dark hair was neatly combed, and he trimmed his stubble to something presentable. Not exactly CEO material, but the best version of Mike Reynolds that existed. Emma appeared in the doorway, giving him a critical once-over. "You look good, Dad, like a rugged businessman." Mike laughed. "Is that even a thing?" "It is now." She handed him the business card. "Don't be nervous. You're the best mechanic in Dallas. Mom always said so." Mike tucked the card into his pocket and kissed the top of her head. "Thanks for the vote of confidence, Mrs. Peterson will be here in 10 minutes to take you to school, okay?" As Mike drove downtown in his aging pickup truck, the landscape around him gradually transformed. The familiar neighborhoods with their small businesses and modest homes gave way to increasingly taller buildings until he was surrounded by glass and steel monuments to wealth and power. The truck, reliable as it was, felt increasingly out of place among the sleek luxury vehicles and European imports that populated the downtown streets. He felt like a relic from another time, apart from the wrong machine. The Morrison building stood 40 stories tall, its glass exterior reflecting the morning sun like a giant mirror. Unlike some of the more ostentatious skyscrapers around it, it had a certain understated elegance, clean lines and perfect proportions that spoke of confidence rather than showmanship. Mike parked in the public garage across the street, wincing at the hourly rate, and walked toward the entrance with his shoulders squared. The lobby was a cavernous space of marble and chrome with a security desk that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. The ceiling soared at least 30 feet overhead, and abstract sculptures dotted the polished floor. Mike approached the desk, feeling the guard's eyes assessing him immediately. He was clearly not the usual visitor to this building. Can I help you, sir? I have an appointment with Diana Morrison. 10 o'clock. Mike Reynolds. The guard checked his computer, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise. Yes, Mr. Reynolds. You're expected. Please sign in. After receiving a visitor's badge, Mike was directed to the express elevator. A smooth voice announced each floor as the elevator ascended, finally stopping at the 38th floor with a soft chime. His stomach lurched slightly at the rapid ascent, reminding him how far he was from solid ground. The doors opened to reveal a reception area decorated in muted grays and blues. The space was elegant but not ostentatious. Comfortable seating, tasteful artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. Behind a curved desk sat a woman in her 30s, her expression professionally neutral, until she saw Mike step out of the elevator. A brief flicker of surprise crossed her face before her smile reasserted itself. Mr. Reynolds, I'm Sandra Chen, Ms. Morrison's executive assistant. We've been expecting you. Mike nodded, suddenly aware of how his boots sounded on the polished floor. Ms. Morrison asked me to come. Sandra stood, her tailored suit and perfect makeup making Mike even more conscious of his worn jeans and faded shirt. Please follow me. Ms. Morrison is finishing a call. You can wait in the conference room. She led him to a glass-walled room with a long table and comfortable chairs. Would you like coffee? Water? Water would be great, thanks. As Sandra left, Mike took in his surroundings. The room offered a panoramic view of Dallas that made the city look like a model display. From this height, even the tallest buildings seemed small, and the streets formed neat geometric patterns. It was strange to think that somewhere down there, his tiny garage continued to exist, invisible from this vantage point. Framed photographs on the walls showed various luxury cars and properties. The Morrison Empire in images. One photo caught his eye, a vintage Ferrari being worked on in what appeared to be an immaculate garage facility. The car was a 250 GT California, worth millions if it was authentic. His fingers itched to pop the hood and see the legendary Colombo V12 engine. Sandra returned with a glass of water and a tablet. Ms. Morrison should be with you shortly. Please make yourself comfortable. Your cell. Left alone, Mike sipped his water and tried not to fidget. After about 10 minutes, he noticed a maintenance worker entering the reception area, looking concerned. The man spoke briefly with Sandra, who frowned and picked up her phone. Mike's attention was drawn to the air vent above the reception desk. Even from the conference room, he could hear a faint rattling sound that his trained ear recognized immediately. Without thinking, he stepped out of the conference room. Excuse me, but your HVAC system has a loose belt. That rattling is going to get worse if you don't fix it soon. The maintenance worker turned, surprised. You can hear that from here? Mike nodded. I work with engines all day. That's a loose drive belt, probably on the air handler. The worker looked impressed. We just got an alert from the building system about vibration in the northeast quadrant unit. How did you know? Mike shrugged. Just what it sounds like. If you catch it now, it's an easy fix. Let it go, and you could be looking at motor damage. The maintenance worker nodded appreciatively. Thanks for the tip. I'll check it right away. As the man hurried off, Mike became aware of Sandra staring at him with a mixture of surprise and reassessment. He was about to apologize for interrupting when a voice spoke from behind him. It seems you have a talent for diagnosing problems, Mr. Reynolds. Mike turned to find Diana Morrison standing in the doorway of her office. Today, in the full light of morning, he could see her more clearly. She was striking rather than conventionally beautiful, with sharp cheekbones and dark hair streaked with silver that was pulled back in a neat bun. Her charcoal suit was clearly expensive, but its clean lines spoke more of practicality than fashion. There was an intensity to her gaze that reminded Mike of master mechanics he'd known, people who could see beyond surfaces to the systems beneath. Just doing what I do, Ms. Morrison. Diana gestured toward her office. Please come in. Mike followed her into a large corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows on two sides. Unlike the sleek, impersonal reception area, Diana's office contained personal touches, photographs, what appeared to be mechanical models, and surprisingly, a vintage car engine part displayed like sculpture on a pedestal. Looking closer, Mike recognized it as a perfectly restored carburetor from a 1960s-era Ferrari, a mechanical work of art to those who understood such things. Please sit. Mike took a seat in one of the chairs facing her desk, noticing they were more comfortable than they looked. Diana sat across from him, her posture perfect. Before we begin, I want to thank you again for helping Olivia last night. The police confirmed this morning that there have been several reports of men in a pickup truck following young women in that area. A muscle in Mike's jaw tightened. Has she been having trouble with anyone specific? Diana shook her head. Not that she's told me. The police think it's opportunistic predators. She leaned forward slightly. But that's not why I asked you here today, Mr. Reynolds. Mike nodded, waiting. After you left last night, I had my security team run a background check on you. Standard procedure when someone interacts with my family. Mike tensed. I've got nothing to hide. No, you don't. Diana's expression softened slightly. In fact, what I found was quite remarkable. Reynolds Auto Repair has the highest customer satisfaction ratings in your area. You've been running it for 8 years, the last 5 on your own, after your wife passed away. You're raising a daughter. You donate repair services to the women's shelter twice a month. You've never had so much as a parking ticket. Mike shifted uncomfortably under her scrutiny. It's just how I was raised. Do right by people. Diana leaned back in her chair. And do you find that philosophy serves you well in business, Mr. Reynolds? I sleep well at night. My customers come back. I'd call that success. A smile flickered across Diana's face. Perhaps by some metrics. She stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Morrison Luxury Group operates a fleet of vehicles. Limousines for executives, transport for clients, demonstration models from our dealerships. Currently valued at over $12 million. She turned to face him. And I have a problem, Mr. Reynolds. My current fleet manager is retiring, and I need someone who understands not just the mechanics of high-end vehicles, but the importance of integrity. Mike blinked, taken aback. You want me to manage your fleet? Diana returned to her desk and pressed a button. A screen descended from the ceiling, displaying photographs of a large, immaculate garage facility filled with luxury vehicles. The space was a mechanic's dream. Spotless floors, state-of-the-art lifts, diagnostic equipment that would make dealerships envious, and row upon row of vehicles that belonged in museums rather than on roads. The Morrison Automotive Center houses 68 vehicles, from Bentleys to Ferraris. We employ 12 mechanics and 3 administrative staff. The position oversees all maintenance, ensures vehicles are ready for client use, and manages the team. The salary is 3 times what you currently make at your garage, plus benefits and performance bonuses. Mike stared at the images on the screen, trying to process what she was saying. The facility was unlike anything he'd ever worked in. Climate-controlled, with specialized tools for exotic materials, diagnostic computers that could pinpoint issues in milliseconds, and an inventory system that tracked every part down to the smallest bolt. It was the difference between a corner grocery and a gourmet supermarket. The vehicles themselves represented the pinnacle of automotive engineering, handcrafted masterpieces where form and function achieved perfect harmony. Why me? You must have people lined up for a job like this. Diana's expression became thoughtful. I have 23 applicants with advanced degrees and experience managing luxury dealerships. What I don't have is someone I can trust. Trust? You don't even know me. I know enough. Diana leaned forward, her gaze intense. When you found my daughter last night, you didn't see a rich girl with a fancy car. You saw someone who needed help. That tells me everything about your character. Mike hesitated, his mind racing. This was beyond anything he'd imagined when he decided to come today. It was an opportunity that could change everything. Financial security for him and Emma, a chance to work with dream machines he'd only glimpsed from a distance, benefits that would include healthcare without the crushing deductibles that had made Sarah's illness so financially devastating. But it was also terrifying, a complete upheaval of the life he'd built. What about his customers, the people who depended on him, and what about Carlos? What about the garage that he and Sarah had poured their hearts into? This is unexpected. Diana smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. The best opportunities often are, Mr. Reynolds, but I don't expect an immediate answer. This would be a significant change for you. She slid a folder across the desk toward him. This contains all the details of the position, including compensation, benefits, and responsibilities. Take it home, review it. The position would begin with a 3-month probationary period for both our benefit. If it doesn't work out, You can return to your garage with a generous severance. Mike took the folder, still stunned. I'll need to think about this. Talk to my daughter. Of course. Diana stood signaling the end of the meeting. I'll need your answer by Friday. And Mr. Reynolds? Yes? In my world, it's often easy to find people with talent. What's much harder is finding people with both talent and integrity. As Mike rode the elevator back down to the lobby, the weight of the folder in his hands seemed to represent the weight of the decision before him. By the time he reached his truck, his mind was already spinning with possibilities and fears. The salary figure he glimpsed in the folder would pay off Sarah's medical bills in months, not decades. It would mean college for Emma without crushing debt. It would mean security he hadn't felt in years. But it would also mean leaving behind the business he and Sarah had built together, the last tangible piece of their shared dream. It would mean entering a world where he might not belong, where his hands-on approach might clash with corporate politics. It would mean trusting that Diana Morrison's assessment of his character would be shared by those under her. What would Sarah have said? He could almost hear her voice. Sometimes the scariest choices lead to the most beautiful destinations. As he drove back toward his neighborhood, Mike knew he was approaching a crossroads that would change everything. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel something he'd nearly forgotten: hope. 3 days after accepting Diana Morrison's offer, Mike Reynolds stood at the entrance of the Morrison Automotive Center, taking a deep breath before pushing open the glass doors. The decision hadn't been easy. Emma had been ecstatic at the news, while Mrs. Peterson had cautiously advised him to read all the fine print. Carlos had understood when Mike explained the situation, even offering to keep an eye on the garage while Mike figured out his next steps. Mike hadn't closed his shop yet. The 3-month probation period at Morrison meant keeping his options open was the smart move. The Morrison Automotive Center was located in a renovated warehouse on the outskirts of Dallas, close enough to downtown for convenience, but with enough space for the extensive operation. From the outside, the building looked understated, its red brick exterior restored to highlight its industrial heritage. Only the discreet Morrison logo above the entrance hinted at what lay inside. As Mike entered, the contrast couldn't have been more stark. The interior was a cathedral to automotive excellence. Polished concrete floors so clean you could eat off them, state-of-the-art equipment arranged with surgical precision, and perfect lighting that eliminated shadows under even the most complex machinery. And the cars, row upon row of automotive royalty, from classic Aston Martins to the latest Italian supercars, each worth more than Mike's house and garage combined. A man in his early 50s approached, his pressed uniform and rigid posture suggesting military background. His silver hair was cut in a precise crew cut, and his eyes held the cold calculation of someone sizing up a potential threat. "You must be Reynolds, Victor Harmon, operations manager." His handshake was firm to the point of discomfort, a power move Mike had encountered before. "Good to meet you, Victor." Mike maintained eye contact, returning the pressure equally without escalating. Victor's expression remained neutral, but Mike detected a flicker of annoyance. "Ms. Morrison informed me of your unique hiring situation. I've been running this facility for 12 years. I'll be overseeing your transition." Something in his tone made it clear that overseeing meant looking for any reason this was a mistake. Mike simply nodded, keeping his expression professional. "I'm looking forward to learning the operation." Victor led him through the facility, pointing out different sections with the detachment of a museum guide. "This is the main service bay for routine maintenance. Diagnostic area to the left. Restoration workshop in the back building. Detailing station on the right." Each area housed equipment that made Mike's modest garage look like a backyard hobby shop. Computerized diagnostic systems, specialized tools for exotic materials, paint booths with environmental controls that could rival medical clean rooms. As they walked, Mike noticed the eyes of the other mechanics following them. Some were openly curious, others deliberately turned away. The tension was palpable. A new boss brought in from outside was clearly unwelcome news to some. Victor stopped at a central workstation. "This will be your desk. The management system has complete records on every vehicle, maintenance schedules, part inventories, staff assignments. Ms. Morrison expects daily reports." He handed Mike a tablet. "You're scheduled to meet the team in 20 minutes. Conference room at the end of the hall. I suggest you spend that time reviewing the priority list. We have 3 vehicles that need immediate attention. With that, Victor turned and walked away, leaving Mike to absorb the enormity of what he'd taken on. He glanced down at the tablet, quickly scanning the interface. It was more sophisticated than what he was used to, but the underlying principles were familiar. Cars were cars, after all, no matter how expensive. They broke down, they needed maintenance, and they required attention to detail. From behind a nearby pillar, a Latino man in his early 40s emerged, wiping his hands on a red shop rag. He approached with a genuine smile. "Don't mind Victor. He's been telling everyone he was next in line for your job. Carlos Mendez." He extended his hand. Mike shook it, immediately noting the calluses of a working mechanic. "Mike Reynolds. We know who you are." Carlos grinned. "Word travels fast. Half the team thinks you're Diana Morrison's long-lost relative. The other half thinks you saved her life in some dramatic way." Mike chuckled. "Nothing that exciting. I just helped her daughter with a flat tire." Carlos raised an eyebrow. "Must have been some flat tire." Before Mike could respond, a voice called out from across the floor. "Carlos, the Ferrari needs you." Carlos gave an apologetic shrug. "Duty calls. See you at the meeting. And hey, some of us are actually glad to have someone who works on real cars for a change." As Carlos hurried away, Mike turned his attention back to the tablet. The priority list list showed 3 vehicles flagged for immediate service: a Bentley Continental GT with electrical issues scheduled for delivery to a client tomorrow, a vintage Jaguar E-Type with fuel system problems, and a Rolls-Royce Phantom with an intermittent starting issue. All 3 represented complex challenges that would test his abilities right from the start. By the time Mike entered the conference room 20 minutes later, most of the team was already assembled. 12 mechanics of varying ages and backgrounds sat around a large table, their expressions ranging from openly hostile to cautiously welcoming. Victor stood at the head of the table, his posture rigid. "Everyone, this is Michael Reynolds, our new fleet manager. Ms. Morrison has brought him in from—" Victor paused, his tone making clear what he thought of Mike's background: his own garage in East Dallas. Mike stepped forward, meeting each person's gaze. "Just Mike is fine. I've been working on cars for over 20 years, everything from farm tractors to Formula Ford racers. I know I'm the new guy here, and you all have specialized experience with these vehicles. I'm counting on that expertise while I get up to speed." The directness seemed to ease some of the tension in the room. One by one, the team introduced themselves. Besides Carlos, there was Jenna, a young woman specializing in electrical systems; Raj, an engine rebuilding expert; Thomas, the diagnostic specialist; and several others whose names and specialties Mike committed to memory. Victor remained standing at the head of the table. "Now that the pleasantries are over, we have work to do." He pulled up a projection of the priority list. "The Bentley Continental needs to be ready by 9 a.m. tomorrow. The client is Lawrence Chen, one of our biggest customers. The electrical issue has persisted despite 3 attempts to resolve it." Mike studied the service history on his tablet. The symptoms described a classic case of parasitic drain. Something was drawing power when the car was off, depleting the battery. The previous technicians had checked the obvious systems but found nothing. "I'll take the Bentley myself," Mike said. "Jenna, since you're our electrical specialist, I'd like your input if you are available." Jenna, a woman in her late 20s with a streak of purple in her otherwise professional bob, looked surprised but nodded. "I can help after I finish the Mercedes I'm working on." Victor's expression tightened. "That's not how we usually assign projects." Mike met his gaze steadily. "I believe in hands-on management. Best way to understand the operation is to get my hands dirty alongside the team." A few of the mechanics exchanged glances, some with approval, others skeptical. Victor's jaw clenched briefly before he continued assigning the remaining tasks. As the meeting broke up, Mike felt the weight of expectations, both from the team now under his supervision and from Victor, who was clearly waiting for him to fail. The Bentley sat in Bay 3, its deep green exterior gleaming under the specialized lighting. Mike circled it slowly, taking in the details. The Continental GT was a masterpiece of engineering, a 12-cylinder powerhouse wrapped in handcrafted luxury. At over $200,000, it represented a different class of vehicle than he typically worked on, but the fundamentals remained the same. Mike pulled on a pair of nitrile gloves, standard procedure in this garage where even a fingerprint on the wrong surface could be considered damage, and began his assessment. He connected the diagnostic computer and reviewed the error codes, finding nothing unexpected. The previous technicians had replaced the battery and checked the alternator, both common culprits for electrical issues. Reaching into his pocket, Mike pulled out a simple multimeter, his own tool, brought from home. Sometimes the basic approaches work best. He began methodically testing the current draw when the vehicle was powered down, working through each circuit. About an hour into his investigation, Jenna appeared at his side. "Need an extra set of hands?" Mike nodded. "I'm checking for parasitic drain, but I'm not finding anything on the standard circuits. Something's drawing power, but it's hiding." Jenna considered this. The Continental has over 30 control modules that could be at fault. "Mind if I try something?" "Please do." She reached for a specialized scanner, a more advanced version of Mike's own tool. This can monitor microamp draws across the CAN bus. Sometimes these luxury cars have sleep modes that don't fully deactivate. Together, they work through a systematic check of the Bentley's complex electrical system. Jenna's familiarity with the car's architecture complemented Mike's methodical troubleshooting process. After another hour, they found the culprit. An aftermarket GPS tracking system installed at the owner's request was failing to enter sleep mode. Jenna looked impressed. Most guys who come in as managers wouldn't have started with actual diagnosis. They just delegate and take credit. Mike shrugged as he began repairing the faulty connection. "That's not leadership. That's just passing the buck. Besides, I learn more about the team by working with them than by watching them." By the end of his first day, Mike had successfully resolved the Bentley's issue and begun to establish a rapport with at least half the team. Carlos had proven particularly helpful, offering insights into the facility's operations and the various personalities at play. Victor had remained distant, checking in periodically with thinly veiled skepticism. As Mike prepared to leave, Victor approached him one final time. "The Bentley's fixed?" "Yes." Faulty connection on the aftermarket GPS unit was preventing it from entering sleep mode. "It's resolved and tested. The paperwork is complete." Victor studied him for a moment. "Beginner's luck, perhaps. Tomorrow won't be so simple. We have the quarterly safety inspection. Every vehicle gets checked, every system tested. I'll be ready. See that you are. Ms. Morrison doesn't tolerate failures when it comes to safety." As Mike drove home that evening, he reflected on the day's challenges. The technical aspects of the bomb were within his capabilities, even with the more exotic vehicles. The human element would prove more difficult. Victor clearly saw him as a threat, and several team members seemed to have aligned with the operations manager. Others, like Carlos and Jenna, appeared willing to give him a chance. Emma was waiting eagerly when he arrived home, bombarding him with questions about the cars and the facility. Her excitement was contagious, temporarily pushing aside his concerns. "Did you drive any of them? Which one was your favorite? Are there any Lamborghinis?" Mike laughed. "No driving yet, just fixing." "And yes, there are two Lamborghinis, an Aventador and a Huracan. But honestly, the most impressive might be the classic Ferrari 250 GT they're restoring." "That's automotive royalty." Emma's eyes widened. "Can I see them sometime?" "I think that could be arranged. Maybe this weekend if I can clear it with Ms. Morrison." As Emma chattered on about supercars, Mike found himself grateful for her enthusiasm. It reminded him why he'd taken this chance, not just for financial security, but to open new doors for both of them. The next morning arrived with new challenges. The quarterly safety inspection was no small task. Each of the 68 vehicles required a comprehensive check of all critical systems. Victor had divided the fleet among the technicians, but had assigned Mike the oldest and most complex vehicles, an obvious attempt to overwhelm him. As Mike reviewed the inspection protocols, he noticed something concerning. The checklist for the brake systems seemed incomplete, missing several key points for vehicles with carbon ceramic brake systems, a common feature in high-performance cars. These specialized brakes require different inspection parameters than conventional systems. Mike approached Victor, who was reviewing assignments with Thomas. "Victor, I noticed something about the brake inspection protocol. It doesn't include specific checks for carbon ceramic systems." Victor barely looked up from his tablet. We've been using these protocols for years without issue. But carbon ceramics degrade differently than standard rotors. They can develop microfractures that won't show up in a visual inspection. We should be doing ultrasonic testing at minimum. Victor's expression hardened. Are you suggesting our safety protocols are inadequate? I'm suggesting they could be more comprehensive. Given the value of these vehicles and the safety implications, that's enough. The protocols were developed by certified engineers and approved by management. If you want to make changes, submit a formal proposal through proper channels. For now, follow the established procedures. Mike recognized the bureaucratic brush-off for what it was. As Victor walked away, Carlos approached, having overheard the exchange. He's not going to listen, no matter how right you are. Victor hates being corrected, especially by the new guy. These aren't just any cars. If a brake system fails at the speeds these machines can reach. I know. Carlos glanced around to ensure they weren't being overheard. Look, we have ultrasonic testing equipment in the diagnostic lab. It's supposed to be for engine block inspections, but it would work for brake rotors too. Mike considered this. That would mean testing outside the official protocol. Carlos shrugged. Better to ask forgiveness than permission when it comes to safety. No? Mike nodded slowly. Let's start with the high-performance cars. We'll do the standard inspection as required, but add the ultrasonic testing as an extra step. Throughout the morning, Mike and Carlos discreetly added the additional brake testing to their inspections. Most vehicles passed without issue, but by early afternoon they encountered a serious problem. A Bentley Bentayga SUV scheduled for client use the following day showed microscopic fractures in its left front brake rotor, invisible to the naked eye, but clearly revealed by the ultrasonic scanner. Mike documented the finding with photographs and test readings. This vehicle can't go out with these brakes. They might hold up for normal driving, but under heavy braking, that rotor could catastrophically fail. Carlos looked nervous. That's Lawrence Chen's wife's vehicle. She's taking it to Houston tomorrow. All the more reason to fix it now. Mike pulled up the parts inventory on his tablet. We have a replacement rotor in stock. We can have it changed out by end of day. Victor's going to be pissed that you went outside protocol. I'd rather have him angry than have a client injured. Or worse. Mike immediately submitted an emergency repair order and assigned Raj to replace the brake rotor. When Victor discovered what was happening an hour later, his reaction was as expected. Who authorized this repair? He demanded, storming into the bay where the Bentley was elevated on a lift. I did, Mike replied calmly. The ultrasonic testing revealed hairline fractures in the rotor. It needed immediate replacement. Ultrasonic testing isn't part of the standard inspection. Victor's face had reddened. You're exceeding your authority and wasting resources on unnecessary procedures. Mike pulled up the test results on his tablet, showing Victor the clear evidence of the damaged rotor. This isn't about authority, it's about safety. That fracture could have led to complete brake failure. Victor studied the image, his expression conflicted. Several mechanics had stopped their work to watch the confrontation. You should have consulted me first. There wasn't time if we wanted the vehicle ready for tomorrow. Mike kept his tone professional despite Victor's hostility. I made a judgment call based on safety concerns. Victor's jaw tightened. I'll be discussing this with Ms. Morrison. In the future, follow the established protocols or go through proper channels for modifications. As Victor stalked away, Mike returned to supervising the repair. Carlos approached, shaking his head. You just painted a target on your back. Maybe, but I'd do it again. Mike watched as Raj carefully installed the new brake rotor. No job is worth compromising on safety. By the end of the day, all 68 vehicles had been inspected, with 3 critical safety issues identified and addressed, all found through Mike's enhanced testing procedures. As he compiled the inspection report, Mike included a detailed section on the additional tests performed and the issues discovered, making a case for updating the standard protocols. He was just finishing the report when his phone rang. It was Diana Morrison. Mr. Reynolds, I understand there was some disagreement about inspection procedures today. Mike took a deep breath. Yes, Ms. Morrison, I identified a gap in the brake inspection protocol and implemented additional testing, which revealed several safety issues that would have been missed otherwise, including a potentially catastrophic brake failure in Mrs. Chen's vehicle. Mike was surprised she already knew the details. That's correct. Victor believes you overstepped your authority. Diana's tone revealed nothing of her own opinion. I made a judgment call based on safety concerns. I'd rather apologize for being thorough than for sending out an unsafe vehicle. The line went silent for a moment. Then Diana spoke again. The Chens are not just clients, Mr. Reynolds. Lawrence sits on our board. His wife and children use that vehicle. I understand. No, I don't think you do. Another pause. What you understand is cars. What you did today potentially saved lives that matter a great deal to this company, and to me personally. Your report is comprehensive and your reasoning sound. I'll be implementing your enhanced inspection protocols company-wide. Relief washed over Mike. Thank you, Miss Morrison. Don't thank me yet. You've made an enemy in Victor, and he has allies within the organization. Watch your back, Mr. Reynolds. Integrity is valued here, but so is following the chain of command. Try to find a balance. After hanging up, Mike sat at his desk processing the conversation. He'd won this battle, but the war was just beginning. Victor wouldn't take this public rebuke lightly, and Mike had no illusions about the challenges ahead. Still, knowing Diana Morrison recognized the value of his actions gave him confidence he'd made the right decision in accepting this position. As if on cue, Victor appeared in the doorway of Mike's office, his expression cold. Congratulations on your victory today. I underestimated your political skills. It wasn't about politics. It was about doing the job right. Victor stepped closer, lowering his voice. Let me be clear. I built this department from nothing. I've kept these vehicles and their very demanding owners satisfied for 12 years. I don't know what connection you have to Diana Morrison, but don't think for a second that you can walk in here and take over. I'm not here to take anything from anyone, Victor. I'm here to do a job. We can work together, or we can work against each other. Your choice. Victor studied him for a long moment. You won't last 3 months. With that, he turned and left. Mike exhaled slowly, realizing the true challenge of this position would have little to do with the complex machines in the garage and everything to do with the people who maintain them. The following Saturday, Mike brought Emma to the facility for a tour. Diana had approved the visit, seeing it as an opportunity to encourage the next generation's interest in automotive excellence. Emma's eyes had grown progressively wider as Mike showed her each section of the massive garage, explaining the functions of equipment and introducing her to the weekend staff. This is the restoration area, Mike explained, as they entered a separate climate-controlled building. Here they rebuild classic cars, sometimes spending years to get every detail perfect. Inside, a team of specialists was working on a 1962 Ferrari 250 GT, its engine completely disassembled on a specialized workbench. The car's iconic red body sat nearby, partially stripped for refinishing. Emma approached reverently, careful not to touch anything. How much is it worth? When it's finished, probably around $4 million. Emma's jaw dropped. $4 million? For a car? For a piece of history, Mike corrected with a smile. Only 36 of these were ever made. As they continued their tour, Emma spotted Olivia entering the main building. The older girl noticed them immediately and came over with a smile. Mike. Emma, I didn't know you'd be here today. Ms. Morrison approved a tour, Mike explained. Emma's been dying to see the place. Olivia turned to Emma with genuine warmth. Want to see my favorite? It's the Aston Martin in Bay 12, the one from the James Bond movies. As the girls walked ahead, chatting easily despite their age difference, Mike felt a strange sense of worlds colliding. Emma, in her second-hand jeans and public school t-shirt, walking alongside Olivia in designer clothes that probably cost more than a month of Mike's salary. Yet there was an ease between them, a natural connection that transcended their different circumstances. They make an unlikely pair, don't they? Mike turned to find Diana Morrison standing beside him, her usual formal attire replaced by more casual pants and a blouse. Still elegant, but less corporate. Ms. Morrison, I didn't know you'd be here today. Diana, please. When we're not in a formal setting, she watched the girls examining the Aston Martin's interior. Olivia told me she's been texting with Emma all week. It's the most animated I've seen her in some time. They both lost their mothers, Mike said quietly. That creates a bond. Diana nodded, her expression softening. Yes, it does. They stood in companionable silence, watching as Olivia explained something about the car's features to an enthralled Emma. How are you finding the position so far? Diana asked finally. Challenging, rewarding, occasionally contentious? Victor giving you trouble? Nothing I can't handle. Mike hesitated, then decided on honesty. He's protective of what he's built. I respect that, even if his methods are counterproductive. Diana's lips quirked in what might have been amusement, a diplomatic answer. Victor has been valuable to this company, but he resists change, and he's never had to face the consequences of cutting corners. Mike glanced at her, surprised by her candor. You knew about the inspection protocols. I suspected. Diana met his gaze directly. This company bears my name, Mr. Reynolds. I don't tolerate shortcuts when it comes to safety, regardless of how long someone has just worked for me. Before Mike could respond, the girls returned, Emma's face flushed with excitement. Dad, Olivia says there's a car show next weekend with a bunch of these cars actually driving. Can we go? Mike looked to Diana, unsure of the protocol for such requests. Diana smiled slightly. Actually, Morrison Group is sponsoring the event. Several of our vehicles will be participating. She turned to Emma. Would you like to attend as our guests? There's a VIP section with much better access to the cars and drivers. Emma's eyes widened. Really? That would be amazing. Diana nodded. I'll have my assistant arrange it. She glanced at Mike. Perhaps your father can even drive one of our showcase vehicles in the parade lap. Now it was Mike's turn to be surprised. Me? Consider it part of your training. Diana's expression was unreadable, but there was a hint of amusement in her eyes. A fleet manager should be familiar with how these vehicles perform, not just how they're maintained. As Diana walked the girls toward the classic car collection, Mike found himself reassessing his new employer. Behind her controlled exterior and business acumen, there was a thoughtfulness he hadn't expected. The offer to include Emma in the car show was generous, but it was the matter-of-fact way Diana had done it, without condescension or making it seem like charity, that impressed him most. The weekend visit had boosted Mike's determination to succeed in this position, not just for financial security, but to show Emma that new worlds were possible. Monday morning found him arriving early, ready to tackle the week's challenges. He was reviewing the schedule when Carlos rushed in, his expression troubled. We've got a problem, the Ferrari 488. It was serviced last week for a routine maintenance, but the client just called. It's making a strange noise and the check engine light is on. Victor's furious. Who did the service? That's the thing, it was assigned to you. Mike frowned. I never touched that Ferrari. The work order says you did. Signed off and everything. Show me. Carlos led him to a computer terminal and pulled up the service record. Sure enough, the digital work order showed Mike as the technician who had performed the 15,000-mile service on a Ferrari 488 Pista and $350,000 vehicle he had never laid hands on. This is wrong. I never serviced this car. I wasn't even in that section of the garage last week. Carlos looked nervous. The client is Lawrence Chen, the same guy whose wife's car had the brake issue. He's demanding answers. The implications were clear. Someone had falsified records to make it appear Mike had mishandled an important client's vehicle, a serious accusation in an industry where reputation was everything. Where's the car now? Being flatbedded in. Should be here in 20 minutes. And Victor, in his office, making calls, probably to Ms. Morrison. Mike's jaw tightened. All right. When the Ferrari arrives, I want to inspect it myself, every inch, and pull the security footage from the service area for the dates on that work order. If someone's setting me up, they made a mistake somewhere. Carlos hesitated. That's going to make Victor even more angry. I'm already being accused of incompetence. Might as well be thorough about proving otherwise. As predicted, Victor was livid when he discovered Mike was personally investigating the Ferrari issue. He cornered Mike in the diagnostic bay just as the vehicle was being unloaded from the flatbed. What do you think you're doing? This situation requires senior staff intervention, not the person who caused the problem. Mike stood his ground. I didn't touch this car, Victor. The work order is falsified. Victor's eyes narrowed. That's a serious accusation. Our system requires biometric authentication to sign off on work orders. Then someone overrode the system or used my credentials without authorization. Either way, I'm going to find out what actually happened to this car. For a moment, it seemed Victor might physically prevent Mike from approaching the Ferrari. Then, with visible restraint, he stepped aside. Fine. Dig your own grave. But when Miss Morrison arrives, and she will, you'd better have proof of these wild claims. The Ferrari 488 Pista was a masterpiece of Italian engineering. Carbon fiber, titanium, and precision electronics wrapped in sculpted red bodywork. As it was carefully positioned in the diagnostic bay, Mike could hear the issue immediately. A rhythmic ticking from the engine compartment that shouldn't be there, accompanied by a subtle vibration. Lawrence Chen, a distinguished man in his 60s wearing a casual but clearly expensive golf outfit, stood nearby, his displeasure evident. His voice carried across the garage as he spoke to Victor. "This is unacceptable. I entrust my collection to Morrison because I expect perfection. This car was flawless before your service." Mike approached, introducing himself respectfully. "Mr. Chen, I'm Mike Reynolds, the new fleet manager. I understand there's an issue with your Ferrari, and I want to assure you we'll identify and resolve the problem immediately." Chen studied him with the shrewd assessment of a successful businessman. "You're the one who found the brake issue on my wife's Bentley." "Yes, sir. And I'm going to find out exactly what's happened here as well." Something in Mike's straightforward manner seemed to reassure Chen. "Very well. Show me what you find." With Carlos's assistance, Mike began a methodical investigation of the Ferrari. He connected the diagnostic computer, reviewed the error codes, and then physically inspected the engine compartment. Within 15 minutes, he had identified the issue, a loose fastener on an exhaust heat shield, causing the ticking sound and triggering the sensors. But as he continued his inspection, Mike discovered something far more concerning. Several of the main engine mount bolts had been deliberately left loose, not enough to cause immediate failure, but sufficient to create progressive damage that would eventually lead to catastrophic engine problems. "This isn't a maintenance oversight," Mike said quietly to Carlos. "This was intentional sabotage." Carlos paled. Who would do that? Someone who wanted to make me look incompetent and put a client in danger. Mike's expression hardened as he documented the evidence with photographs. "Let's fix the immediate issues, and then I need to see that security footage." As they worked, Mike noticed Diana Morrison had arrived and was speaking with Victor near the entrance. Her expression was serious as Victor gesticulated toward the Ferrari. Within an hour, Mike had resolved the heat shield issue and properly torqued the engine mount bolts. The Ferrari purred perfectly during the test run, all warning lights extinguished. Mr. Chen seemed impressed. "That was efficient. And what exactly was the problem?" Mike showed him the documentation explaining the technical issues without talking down to him. Chen listened attentively, his expression growing more concerned as Mike detailed the loose engine mounts. "You're saying this was deliberate?" "The evidence suggests that, yes." Mike met Chen's gaze directly. "These bolts don't loosen themselves, and they weren't part of the routine service procedure. Someone intentionally tampered with your vehicle." Chen's expression darkened. "I want to know who, and I want them removed from servicing my collection." "We're investigating now, sir. You have my word we'll get to the bottom of this." As Chen left with a loaner vehicle, Diana approached Mike, her expression unreadable. "My office, now, and bring your evidence." 20 minutes later, Mike sat across from Diana in her office at the facility, laying out the photographic evidence and service records. "The digital records show I performed this service, but I never touched this car. The timestamp shows the work being done Thursday afternoon, when I was actually meeting with the parts supplier about the new inventory system." Diana herself had authorized that meeting. Diana examined the photos of the loose engine mount bolts. And these weren't simply overlooked during service? Impossible. Mike shook his head. These bolts are torqued to precise specifications and locked with thread compound. They couldn't work loose accidentally, and they weren't included in the routine service procedure anyway. Someone deliberately loosened them, enough to cause progressive damage but not immediate failure, which would make the problem appear after you had signed off on the service. Exactly. Mike met her gaze steadily. "Someone wants me to fail, Ms. Morrison. They're willing to sabotage a client's vehicle and potentially put lives at risk to make that happen." Diana's expression hardened. "What do you need to prove it?" "Security footage from the service area for last Thursday, and access to the system logs to see who actually entered my credentials." She nodded and picked up her phone. Sandra, I need the security team to provide Mr. Reynolds with complete access to last week's garage footage and the system audit logs for the service management software. Priority authorization. Tell them I want it within the hour. After hanging up, Diana studied Mike thoughtfully. You've made quite an impression in your short time here, Mr. Reynolds. Not everyone appreciates having their methods questioned or their territory encroached upon. I'm not here to step on toes. I just won't compromise on safety or integrity. A good policy. Diana's expression softened slightly. But remember what I said about making enemies. Victor has been with the company since the beginning. He has connections throughout the organization and with several key clients, including Lawrence Chen. Diana's slight hesitation was answer enough. They belonged to the same golf club. Victor handled his collection personally for years. Until you hired me. Until I hired you. Diana leaned forward. Find the proof, Mike. Hard evidence that can't be disputed. If someone on my team is willing to endanger a client to protect their position, I need to know who. But be careful. Whoever did this has already shown they're willing to cross lines that shouldn't be crossed. As Mike left Diana's office, the weight of the situation settled fully upon him. This wasn't just about professional rivalry or workplace politics. Someone had deliberately sabotaged a vehicle, potentially endangering lives, to discredit him. The stakes were far higher than he had imagined when accepting this position. Carlos was waiting near the service bay, his expression concerned. You okay? What did she say? She's authorized access to the security footage and system logs. Mike's determination was evident in his voice. We're going to find out who did this. You think it was Victor? Mike considered this. He has the most obvious motive, but we need proof. No accusations without evidence. As they walked toward the security office, Mike's phone buzzed with a text from Emma. How's work? Is everything okay? He realized he'd need to be careful about what he shared with her. The last thing he wanted was for Emma to worry about his job security when they were just starting to feel some stability. He texted back, all good, just solving mysteries. See you tonight. Carlos noticed his expression. Everything all right? Mike nodded, pocketing his phone. Just Emma checking in. Let's focus on finding our saboteur. In the security office, they began the tedious process of reviewing footage from the previous Thursday. The garage's camera system was comprehensive, covering nearly every angle of the facility, but the sheer volume of footage made the task daunting. After 2 hours of careful review, they found what they were looking for. The footage clearly showed someone working on Chen's Ferrari late Thursday evening, long after most staff had left. The figure moved with purpose, deliberately loosening the engine mount bolts and then accessing a computer terminal. Mike leaned closer to the screen. Can you enhance this? The security officer adjusted the settings, bringing the image into sharper focus. The person's face became clear, not Victor as Mike had half expected, but Thomas, the diagnostic specialist who had always seemed quietly competent and uninvolved in garage politics. Carlos looked shocked. Thomas? Why would he sabotage the car? Mike remembered seeing Thomas and Victor in frequent conversation, often falling silent when Mike approached. Let's check the system logs. I want to see who accessed my credentials. The logs confirmed their suspicion. Thomas had used an administrative override to access Mike's profile and falsify the service record, making it appear Mike had worked on the Ferrari when he hadn't. Carlos shook his head in disbelief. I've worked with Thomas for 3 years. Never thought he'd do something like this. People surprise you. Mike gathered the evidence, video clips and system logs, and prepared to present them to Diana. I need to take this to Ms. Morrison immediately. The evidence against Thomas was damning, but Mike's instincts told him there was more to the story. Thomas was a competent technician with a spotless record, not someone who would risk his career and potentially people's lives without significant pressure or incentive. As Mike prepared to present his findings to Diana, he continued digging through the system logs and security footage, searching for connections that might reveal the bigger picture. What he found was a pattern of meetings between Thomas, Victor, and a well-dressed visitor who appeared in the facility roughly once a month. The visitor never worked on vehicles, but often engaged in lengthy conversations with Victor in his office. Reviewing visitor logs identified him as Ted Simmons, a board member and major shareholder in Morrison Group. With Carlos's help, Mike discreetly gathered more information about Simmons. He was Diana Morrison's former brother-in-law, her late husband's brother, who had repeatedly tried to gain controlling interest in the company. According to Garage Gossip, Simmons believed Diana wasn't tough enough to run the business and had been positioning himself as the alternative for years. Olivia proved an unexpected ally in the investigation. After learning about the sabotage from her mother, she approached Mike with an offer to help. "My mother doesn't know I'm telling you this," she said during a quiet moment when Mike was working late, "but Ted Simmons has been trying to force her out for years. He thinks a woman can't run an automotive company, especially one started by his brother." Mike looked up from the service records he was reviewing. "Does your mother know that?" "She knows, but she can't prove it. Board politics are complicated." Olivia fidgeted with her phone. "I've heard things at family events. Ted has been meeting with key shareholders, trying to convince them Mom is making poor business decisions." "Like hiring me?" Olivia nodded. "Hiring someone without industry credentials or connections. It gave Ted ammunition. And I think Victor has been helping him." "Why are you telling me this?" Olivia's expression became determined. "Because you helped me when I needed it. And because my mom needs allies she can trust." The teenager's insight surprised Mike. At 19, Olivia had clearly inherited her mother's sharp intelligence and strategic thinking. She explained that Ted had been particularly vocal at the last family gathering, criticizing Diana's judgment and suggesting the company needed more traditional leadership. With this new context, Mike, Carlos, and Olivia formed an unlikely investigative team. Carlos provided insider knowledge of garage operations and access to areas Mike couldn't yet reach without raising suspicion. Olivia contributed insights into company politics and historical conflicts between Ted and her mother. Mike connected the technical evidence, tracing digital footprints through the company systems. For 2 days, they worked whenever they could steal moments away from their regular duties. Carlos reviewed security footage from previous months, looking for patterns. Olivia discreetly accessed old family emails that mentioned company business, searching for evidence of Ted's long-term agenda. Mike analyzed system logs linking Thomas's activities to specific incidents that had undermined Diana's leadership. The breakthrough came when Olivia discovered emails between Ted and Victor discussing ways to demonstrate Diana's poor judgment. The language was careful, never explicitly mentioning sabotage, but the timing of the messages aligned perfectly with mysterious technical failures that had embarrassed Diana in front of key clients. "When you put the timeline together, it's obvious," Mike said, spreading printouts across his desk after hours. "Every time Diana made a major business decision against Ted's recommendations, a technical mishap occurred with a high-profile client's vehicle." Carlos nodded grimly. "And the sabotage Ferrari was just the latest, aimed specifically at you, the new hire Ted opposed." Olivia studied the evidence, her expression troubled. "If Ted has been doing this for years, there must be more we haven't found yet." Mike leaned back, considering their options. They had evidence of Thomas's direct involvement in the Ferrari sabotage and circumstantial evidence linking Thomas to Victor and Victor to Ted. But to expose the full conspiracy, they needed something more concrete, irrefutable proof that Victor had directed Thomas to sabotage vehicles and that Ted was the mastermind behind it all. "I think we need to set a trap," Mike said finally, "something that will force them to reveal themselves." The plan they devised was risky, but potentially decisive. Mike would announce a major inspection of all VIP client vehicles, claiming to have discovered a potentially dangerous manufacturing defect in a common component. The inspection would require all vehicles to be processed through a special diagnostic protocol, one that Mike would personally oversee. If Victor and Ted were indeed sabotaging vehicles, they would either have to allow the inspection to expose their previous tampering or attempt to interfere with the process. The announcement went out the next morning, causing immediate concern among clients and staff. As Mike had predicted, Victor strongly opposed the inspection, citing client inconvenience and unnecessary expenses. When Mike insisted, Victor became increasingly agitated, eventually demanding a private meeting. In Victor's office, Mike carefully recorded the conversation using his phone, a legally questionable move in normal circumstances, but one Diana had authorized given the safety implications. "This inspection is completely unnecessary," Victor insisted, pacing behind his desk. "You're going to alarm our clients for no reason." Mike kept his expression neutral. Safety can't be compromised, Victor. If there's even a small chance of a component failure, we need to check every vehicle. Victor's face reddened. You've been here what, 6 weeks? And suddenly you think you know better than people who've managed these vehicles for years? I know that someone has been tampering with client vehicles, Mike said calmly, and I'm going to find out who. The statement hung in the air, a clear challenge. Victor's expression shifted, calculation replacing anger. Serious accusation, Reynolds. You'd better have proof. Mike met his gaze steadily. I will by the end of these inspections. The trap was set. That night, security cameras captured Victor and Thomas entering the diagnostic area after hours, systematically accessing vehicles scheduled for inspection the next day. They appeared to be removing evidence of previous tampering rather than installing new sabotage, exactly as Mike had hoped. Most damning of all, Ted Simmons arrived shortly after midnight, engaging in an intense conversation with Victor that was captured by the facility's audio system. Their words were explicit, discussing how to clean up any trace of their previous adjustments to client vehicles. Armed with comprehensive evidence, security footage, system logs, email exchanges, recorded conversations, and a timeline of incidents correlated with Diana's business decisions, Mike requested an emergency meeting with Diana Mao and the executive team. Victor would be there, unaware that his scheme had been uncovered. The conference room on the top floor of Morrison headquarters was imposing. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Dallas, while a massive mahogany table dominated the space. Diana sat at the head, with board members and executives arrayed on either side. Ted Simmons sat near Diana Mao, his expression smug. Victor stood by the presentation screen, having just finished a quarterly report that painted Mike's department in a negative light. Thank you, Victor, for that comprehensive assessment, Diana said, her tone neutral. Mr. Reynolds, I believe you have something to present? Mike stood, connecting his tablet to the display system. Yes, Ms. Morrison. I've been investigating a series of incidents at the Automotive Center, including the recent issue with Mr. Chen's Ferrari. The room shifted subtly as interest sharpened. Lawrence Chen was not only a major client, but also a significant investor. I have evidence that Mr. Chen's vehicle was deliberately sabotaged, Mike continued, bringing up the security footage. This shows Thomas Wilson loosening the engine mount bolts on Thursday evening, long after normal service hours. Murmurs spread through the room as the footage played. Victor's face remained impassive, but Mike noticed a slight tightening around his eyes. Thomas Wilson has admitted to falsifying service records to make it appear I had worked on the vehicle, Mike continued. He's provided a written statement explaining that he was acting under direct orders. Victor's composure slipped. That's preposterous. If Wilson tampered with a client vehicle, he acted alone. This is clearly an attempt to shift blame for incompetence. Mike met Victor's gaze steadily. Thomas had nothing to gain from sabotaging the Ferrari. You, however, had plenty to gain from making me look incompetent. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Reynolds, Ted Simmons interjected smoothly. Do you have any actual evidence linking Victor to this alleged sabotage? Or are we witnessing a desperate attempt to salvage your reputation? Mike nodded, bringing up a new screen. Actually, I do. What followed was a methodical presentation of evidence. Emails between Victor and Ted discussing ways to accelerate Reynolds' departure. Calendar entries showing meetings between Thomas, Victor, and Ted before each incident. And financial records showing unusual payments from one of Ted's shell companies to Thomas's personal account. Each piece of evidence was presented with clinical precision, building an inescapable case. Board members leaned forward, their expressions growing increasingly troubled. Diana remained impassive, though Mike noticed a subtle tightening of her jaw as the evidence against her brother-in-law mounted. Most damning were the recorded conversations between Victor, Thomas, and Ted, captured by the garage's security system just the previous night. Make sure there's no evidence of our previous work, Ted had instructed. Diana can't know how long we have been managing these mechanical issues to demonstrate her poor judgment. As the recording played, Ted's face drained of color. He leaned over to whisper urgently to his attorney, who had suddenly become very busy taking notes. Mike concluded his presentation with a comprehensive timeline, linking each mechanical failure to specific business decisions Diana had made against Ted's recommendations, going back nearly 3 years. When Mike finished, silence hung heavy in the air. Finally, Diana spoke, her voice dangerously calm. Victor, would you care to respond to these allegations? Victor's composure had crumbled. His eyes darted between Ted, who was still whispering to his attorney, and Diana, whose steady gaze offered no escape. These recordings are taken out of context. I was discussing theoretical scenarios, training exercises, and the payments to Thomas Wilson's account, Diana asked. Were those theoretical as well? Ted suddenly stood. This is absurd. These so-called evidences are clearly fabricated by Reynolds to cover his incompetence. Victor has served this company faithfully for years. Mike brought up one final piece of evidence, an email from Ted to Victor. Diana's judgment in hiring this mechanic proves she's unfit to lead. Once we've demonstrated Reynolds' incompetence publicly, the board will have no choice but to reconsider leadership. The room erupted in voices, board members demanding explanations, executives expressing shock. Through the chaos, Mike's eyes met Diana's. She gave him a slight nod of acknowledgement before turning to address the room. Gentlemen, ladies, please. Her voice cut through the noise, commanding immediate silence. The evidence presented appears substantial and deeply troubling. Victor, Ted, you have the right to respond, but I suggest you consider your words carefully. Victor, now visibly sweating, looked to Ted for guidance. Ted remained standing, his expression thunderous. This is a witch hunt, Diana. You've never forgiven me for challenging your decisions. So you've enlisted this mechanic to fabricate evidence against you. Diana's eyebrow arched elegantly. The security footage is fabricated? The financial transactions documented by our own accounting department are fabricated? Your emails, sent through company servers, are fabricated? Ted faltered, realizing the extent of the evidence against him. Victor broke first. It wasn't supposed to go this far, he blurted, his voice cracking. No one was supposed to get hurt. We just wanted to prove she was making poor decisions. Ted shot Victor a venomous look. Shut up, you fool. But Victor had reached his breaking point. It was just supposed to be minor issues, easily fixed. Make Reynolds look bad enough that you'd have to let him go. Prove Diana's judgment was flawed. But then you kept pushing for more serious problems. As Victor continued his confession, implicating Ted in increasingly serious ethical breaches, Mike watched the board members' reactions shift from skepticism to outrage. Ted attempted to interrupt several times, but each protestation only dug him deeper as Victor, now desperate to save himself, revealed more details of their scheme. We were careful at first, Victor explained, words tumbling out. Just small issues that would inconvenience clients, make them question the service quality. But after Reynolds came on board, Ted wanted something more dramatic. The Ferrari's engine mounts, that was crossing a line. Someone could have been seriously injured if the engine had shifted during hard driving. Finally, Diana raised her hand, silencing the room once more. She turned to Victor, her expression a perfect blend of disappointment and cold fury. Victor, you've worked for this company since my husband founded it. You were trusted with our clients' safety and our company's reputation. Yet you deliberately endangered people's lives to advance your personal agenda. Victor's shoulders slumped in defeat. Diana continued, her voice steady. A person with talent but without integrity is nothing but a paid danger to society. The words hung in the air, simple yet profound in their truth. Diana turned to the board. I move for the immediate termination of Victor Harmon's employment with Morrison Group, and I recommend the board consider legal action regarding the deliberate endangerment of clients. I also request Ted Simmons' resignation from the board, effective immediately. Ted attempted one last defense. You can't force me out. I own 15% of this company. Robert would never have... Diana cut him off, her voice like steel. Robert valued integrity above all else, Ted. Something you never understood. The board can't force you to sell your shares, but we can and will investigate every vehicle failure under your influence. If we find evidence of deliberate sabotage endangering clients, the legal implications will extend far beyond employment termination. The vote was swift and unanimous. As security escorted Ted and Victor from the room, Diana addressed the remaining executives. This company was built on two principles: excellence and integrity. We will not compromise either, regardless of who is involved. She turned to Mike. Mr. Reynolds, thank you for your thorough investigation. Please see me in my office after this meeting concludes. An hour later, Mike sat across from Diana in her office, the Dallas skyline glittering behind her in the late afternoon sun. The tension of the boardroom confrontation had eased, but the gravity of the situation remained. You've done exceptional work, Mike. Not many people would have had the courage to stand up against such entrenched opposition. Mike shrugged slightly. I just followed the evidence. Anyone would have done the same. Diana smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her usually composed features. We both know that's not true. You risked your position, a position that meant financial security for you and Emma, to do what was right. That's rare. She stood, moving to look out the window. Victor's betrayal has left a significant void in our organization. We need someone to oversee not just the automotive center, but all technical operations across Morrison Group. Mike blinked, understanding dawning. Ms. Morrison, Diana, please. Diana, are you offering me Victor's job? No, she turned to face him. I'm offering you something bigger, Director of Technical Operations for the entire Morrison Group, overseeing all our automotive facilities, restoration projects, and mechanical operations. The scope of the offer was staggering. Mike would be responsible for hundreds of employees across multiple facilities, managing operations worth tens of millions of dollars. The position would place him among the top executives in the company, reporting directly to Diana. That's a significant promotion from guy who fixes cars, Mike said carefully. Diana's expression softened slightly. Sometimes we find talent in unexpected places. The position is yours if you want it. Same probationary period, triple your current salary, plus executive benefits and profit sharing. Mike considered the offer, its implications for his life and Emma's future. No more financial struggles, no more juggling bills, a clear path for Emma's education, but also new pressures, greater responsibilities, in a world far removed from the garage where he'd spent most of his professional life. I'd need to learn a lot, quickly. Diana nodded. You'd have resources and support. I don't expect perfection immediately, just the same integrity and problem solving you've already demonstrated. Mike made his decision. I accept, with one condition. Diana raised an eyebrow, which is, I want to keep my hands dirty occasionally. No matter how many people I'm managing, I need to remember what it feels like to fix things myself. Diana's smile was genuine. I think that can be arranged. The weeks following Ted and Victor's departure were challenging but exhilarating. Mike moved into a new office, still modest by executive standards, but significantly more impressive than his previous space. He assembled a transition team, keeping trusted employees like Carlos in key positions, while bringing in fresh talent to fill critical gaps. His approach to leadership drew from his experience as a mechanic, diagnose the problem thoroughly, use the right tools for the problem, and test the solution under real conditions. Where other executives might rely solely on reports and metrics, Mike insisted on regular facility visits, often appearing unannounced to work alongside technicians and gain first-hand understanding of challenges. The automotive staff, initially skeptical of his rapid promotion, gradually warmed to his hands-on management style. Unlike Victor, who had managed through fear and favoritism, Mike fostered a culture of accountability balanced with respect. Mistakes were treated as learning opportunities rather than failures, but negligence was never tolerated, especially where safety was concerned. His first major initiative was a company-wide review of safety protocols, implementing standardized procedures across all facilities. The comprehensive Reynolds Standard, as it became known internally, combined rigorous technical requirements with practical training and clear accountability measures. The result was an immediate decrease in service-related issues and a corresponding increase in client satisfaction. Emma thrived during this transition period, adapting to their improved circumstances with characteristic resilience. They moved from their modest home to a comfortable townhouse closer to the Morrison headquarters, though Mike insisted on keeping many of their original furnishings. New job doesn't mean we need a new life, he explained to Emma. Just a better version of the one we have. At school, Emma's academic performance improved as financial stress receded from their lives. She joined the robotics club, discovering an aptitude for electronics that made Mike both proud and slightly intimidated. You get that from your mother, he told her one evening, as she explained a circuit design with enthusiasm that reminded him painfully of Sarah. The most unexpected development, however, was the deepening friendship between Emma and Olivia. Despite their age difference and vastly different backgrounds, the girls had formed a genuine bond. Olivia had become a regular visitor to their new home, often joining them for dinner or weekend activities. Emma, in turn, occasionally visited the Morrison estate, though she admitted to Mike that the grandeur made her uncomfortable. "They're so rich, Dad," she whispered after her first visit. "They have an actual fountain inside their house." Mike's work brought him into frequent contact with Diana, their professional relationship evolving into a productive partnership based on mutual respect. Where Ted had seen Diana's softness as weakness, Mike recognized it as a different kind of strength, an emotional intelligence that complemented her business acumen, allowing her to lead through inspiration rather than intimidation. Their collaboration proved remarkably effective. Diana's strategic vision paired with Mike's practical approach yielded innovations that enhanced both the company's reputation and its profitability. The board, initially cautious about Mike's unconventional background, became enthusiastic supporters as financial results validated Diana's faith in him. 4 months into Mike's new role, Ted Simmons launched his counterattack. Unable to directly challenge Diana after his disgrace, Ted instead targeted Mike through proxy battles, spreading rumors about his qualifications, questioning his relationship with Diana, and applying pressure through his remaining allies in the automotive industry. The Dallas Business Journal ran a profile with the not-so-subtle headline, "From Grease Monkey to Executive, Morrison's Unconventional Hire Raises Questions." The article heavily quoted industry insiders, questioning Mike's qualifications and hinting at improper personal connections between Diana and her new director. The whispers became impossible to ignore, particularly when they began affecting business relationships. Several longtime clients requested meetings with Diana, ostensibly to discuss their accounts, but ultimately raising questions about the sudden changes in company leadership. Diana handled the public relations aspect with practiced grace, issuing statements that emphasized Mike's technical expertise and innovative management approach. Behind closed doors, however, the pressure took its toll on both of them. "I'm sorry you're being dragged through this," Diana said during a late strategy session. "Ted has always been vindictive, but this is low even for him." Mike shrugged, reviewing the latest industry analysis. "I've been called worse than Grease Monkey. It's you I'm worried about. These rumors about us." Diana's expression tightened momentarily. "My personal life has been fodder for gossip since I took over the company. This is nothing new, but it's affecting the business. Some of the dealers are getting nervous, and it's complicated things between us professionally." It was true. Since the rumors began, their previously comfortable working relationship had acquired an awkward edge. They were both overly conscious of appearances, limiting one-on-one meetings and maintaining rigid formality in public. Strategy sessions that once flowed naturally now felt stilted, with both carefully monitoring their language and behavior. Meanwhile, Emma and Olivia had become increasingly close, complicating the personal boundaries between the families. The girls spent weekends together, attended the same events, and were beginning to function as a unit despite their age difference. Their friendship was a positive development, but it created additional pressure on Mike and Diana to navigate the complex territory between personal and professional relationships. The situation came to a head at the annual Morrison Group Charity Gala, a high-profile event attended by clients, industry leaders, and Dallas society. Mike, uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo, had brought Emma, who was wide-eyed at the opulence around her. Diana had suggested that Olivia could show Emma around, giving the preteen a friendly guide through the intimidating social landscape. The girls disappeared into the crowd, leaving Mike to navigate the room alone, conscious of the whispers and glances that followed him. He was examining a display of automotive memorabilia when Ted Simmons appeared beside him, champagne flute in hand. "Enjoying your ascension to the upper echelons, Reynolds?" Ted's smile didn't reach his eyes. Quite a leap from changing oil to sipping champagne with the elite. Mike met his gaze calmly. "I still prefer a good beer, actually, but the company's nice." Ted chuckled without humor. "You know it won't last, don't you? Diana's infatuations never do. Once she tires of her man of the people phase, you'll be back in that little garage, wondering what hit you." Is there something specific you wanted, Mr. Simmons? Or did you just come over to demonstrate why people find you so charming? Ted's eyes hardened. A word of advice. When Diana pushes you aside, and she will, don't make the mistake of thinking you matter to her. You're a novelty, a project, just like all the others. Before Mike could respond, Diana appeared beside them, resplendent in a midnight blue gown. Her smile was polite, but her eyes were ice as she regarded her former brother-in-law. Ted, I see you're getting reacquainted with Mike. How lovely. Just sharing some institutional wisdom, Diana. Ted's smile was razor sharp. Someone should warn the new executives about the temporary nature of your favor. Diana's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. The board meeting is next week, Ted. I understand you'll be presenting your formal resignation then. Ted's smile faltered. You can't force me out completely. I still own shares. Yes, you do. And as a shareholder, you are welcome to attend functions as an invited guest. Diana's emphasis made it clear this might be Ted's last such invitation. If you'll excuse us, Mike and I have business to discuss. She guided Mike away with a light touch on his arm, leaving Ted seething behind them. Once they were out of earshot, her composed facade cracked slightly. I apologize for that. Ted has always believed he deserved to run the company simply because he's a Simmons. When my husband died and left controlling interest to me, Ted never forgave either of us. Mike studied her, noting the tension in her shoulders despite her outward composure. He's been spreading rumors about us. Diana sighed. Yes, it's his preferred tactic when he can't win directly. Undermine my judgment by questioning my personal relationships. They found a relatively quiet corner near a display of vintage racing photographs. Diana glanced at them, a distant expression crossing her face. You know, my husband Robert started this company with one garage and 3 vintage cars he restored himself. Diana's voice held a nostalgic quality Mike had never heard before. He was a brilliant mechanic with an eye for detail that could spot a non-original screw from across the room. Mike looked at her with new interest. I didn't know that. Most people don't. Diana smiled faintly. When we met, I was running a small marketing firm. He hired me to promote his restoration business. 6 months later, we were married. Everyone thought it was a whirlwind romance. But when you know, you know. Mike noticed she was looking at a particular photograph, a young man in overalls leaning over the engine bay of a classic Ferrari, his expression pure joy. Is that him? Diana nodded. Robert Simmons, finest mechanic in Texas, according to the article that photo accompanied. She turned to Mike, something vulnerable in her expression. You remind me of him sometimes. The way you lose yourself in the work, the respect you have for the machines. Mike felt a strange twist in his chest as pieces clicked into place. Is that why you hired me? Because I reminded you of your husband? Diana hesitated, choosing her words carefully. It's what first caught my attention, yes. When I saw you helping Olivia that night, something in your manner, the care you took, the quiet competence, it reminded me of Robert. Mike absorbed this, uncertain how to feel. So the job offer wasn't really about my skills? No, Diana said firmly. The reminder might have made me notice you, but the offer was based entirely on your abilities and character. I wouldn't risk my company on sentiment, Mike. Before he could respond, they were interrupted by Emma and Olivia, breathless with excitement from exploring the gala. The moment passed, but the question lingered in Mike's mind throughout the evening and in the days that followed. Was he valued for his own merits? Or was he merely a ghost of Diana's past? The thought nagged at him, affecting his confidence and his performance. Key decisions became second-guessed. Interactions with Diana grew stilted, and the rumors Ted had spread seemed increasingly plausible in his darker moments. Diana, too, seemed to withdraw, their once easy professional rapport now formal and distant. Board meetings and executive functions became exercises in careful neutrality, both of them hyper-aware of the scrutiny they faced. The emotional toll of maintaining this facade began to affect their work, with projects delayed and communication breakdowns occurring more frequently. Mike found himself spending more time in the garage facilities, hands deep in engines, rather than managing operations from his office. The physical work grounded him, providing clarity that eluded him in the executive suite. It was during one of these self-imposed working retreats that Carlos approached him, concern evident in his expression. You've been avoiding the big office for 2 weeks now, Hefe. Everything okay? Mike wiped his hands on a shop rag, considering how to respond. Just needed to remember why I do this. Sometimes all the meetings and reports make you forget what the work is actually about. Carlos nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. The teams noticed the tension between you and Ms. Morrison. People are wondering if Ted Simmons's rumors have some truth to them. Mike stiffened. What do you mean? Carlos shrugged uncomfortably. That you were hired for personal reasons. That your promotion wasn't about your abilities. The words hit Mike like a physical blow, confirming his own deepest insecurities. If the staff was questioning his legitimacy, how long before the board followed suit? How long before Diana herself began to regret her decision? A month after the gala, Mike sat alone in his office, staring at a resignation letter on his computer screen. The past weeks had been a struggle of self-doubt and growing discomfort. Despite his success in the role, implementing new safety protocols, restructuring maintenance schedules, improving team morale, he couldn't shake the feeling that his position was built on Diana's nostalgia rather than his actual abilities. The knock on his door was so soft he almost missed it. He looked up to find Emma and Olivia standing in the doorway, their expressions unusually serious. "Dad, can we talk to you?" Emma asked. Mike closed his laptop. "Sure, Pumpkin. What's up?" The girls exchanged glances before Olivia spoke. "We know you're thinking about quitting." Mike blinked in surprise. "How did you—" Mama rolled her eyes. "You've been moping around for weeks, Dad, and you were looking at resignation letter templates on your computer last night. I saw it when I brought you coffee." Mike sighed. "It's complicated, girls. Is it because of what people are saying about you and my mom?" Olivia asked directly. "Partly," Mike admitted, "but it's more than that. I'm just not sure I belong here." The girls sat down across from him, Emma leaning forward intently. "Dad, you've always told me that running away isn't the answer, that we face problems head on. This isn't running away, Emma. It's recognizing when something isn't the right fit." Olivia's expression grew determined. "Have you actually talked to my mother about this? About why you think you don't belong?" Mike shifted uncomfortably. "We've been keeping things professional." "That's stupid," Olivia said bluntly. "Both of you are miserable, the company is suffering, and neither of you will just talk to each other." Emma nodded in agreement. "Olivia's mom thinks you're pulling away because you don't want to work with her anymore. And you think she only hired you because you remind her of her husband. You're both wrong and you're both too stubborn to figure it out." Mike stared at his daughter, taken aback by her insight and directness. "When did you get so wise?" Emma grinned. "I've always been the smart one in the family, Dad." Olivia leaned forward, her expression earnest. "My mom talks about your work all the time, how you've improved safety standards, how you've developed the restoration division, how you've earned the respect of people who've been in the industry for decades. That's not about my dad. That's about you." The conversation with the girls left Mike thoughtful. That evening, after much consideration, he called Diana and requested a meeting. Not at the office, but on neutral ground where they could speak openly without corporate politics or appearances to consider. They met at a small cafe halfway between their homes, casual in jeans rather than business attire. After ordering coffee, they sat in awkward silence until Diana finally spoke. "Olivia tells me you have been considering resignation." Mike nodded. "I drafted the letter this afternoon. May I ask why?" Mike met her gaze directly. "Because I don't want to be a replacement for Robert." Diana's expression shifted from neutral to surprised. "Is that what you think? That I hired you to replace my husband?" "The thought has crossed my mind." Mike's voice was steady. "At the gala, you said I reminded you of him. And Ted suggested that I'm just a project for you, something temporary." Diana's laugh was sharp and without humor. "And you believed Ted Simmons over me?" "Not intentionally, but it made a certain sense." Mike shrugged. "Why else would someone like you take a chance on someone like me?" Diana studied him for a long moment, her expression softening. "Mike, when Robert died, I lost not just my husband, but my partner in every sense. He understood cars, and I understood business. Together, we built something special." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Yes, something about you that night reminded me of him. The care you took with Olivia, the respect you showed for the work. But that was just what made me notice you." What made me hire you was your integrity, your skill, and your commitment to doing things right. Mike listened, wanting to believe her, but still uncertain. Diana continued, her voice growing more passionate. Do you think I would risk my company, the legacy Robert and I built together, on sentimentality? Do you think I would jeopardize the safety of our clients, the future of our employees, just because someone reminded me of my late husband? When you put it that way, it's absurd, Mike. Diana reached across the table, briefly touching his hand. Yes, there was a moment of recognition when we met, but everything since then, the job offer, the promotion, all of it, has been based entirely on your performance and character. She leaned back, her expression growing reflective. When Robert died, Ted expected me to sell my shares to him. When I refused, he told the board I wasn't capable of running a technical company, that I was just a marketing wife. She smiled thinly. I proved him wrong by learning everything I could about the business, but I never pretended to have Robert's mechanical intuition. That's what you bring to the table, not as a replacement for him, but as your own person, with your own unique skills. Mike felt something tight in his chest begin to loosen. I've been an idiot, haven't I? Diana smiled slightly. We both have. I should have been clearer about why I valued you, and we should have addressed the rumors directly instead of letting them create distance between us. So where do we go from here? Mike asked. Diana's expression became thoughtful. First, I hope you'll reconsider your resignation. The company needs you, not as a ghost of Robert, but as yourself with all the skills and perspective you bring. And second, we stop letting Ted Simmons and gossip dictate our professional relationship. We work together as we did before, with honesty and mutual respect. Mike nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the past weeks lifting. I'd like that. As they continued talking, the conversation shifted from professional to personal, both recognizing that the boundaries between the two had become unnecessarily rigid. They discussed Emma and Olivia's friendship, the challenges of single parenthood, and their shared vision for the company's future. Diana shared stories about Robert that she rarely told anyone, not the sanitized version of the brilliant businessman, but the real man who sometimes forgot to shower when he was deep in a restoration project, who could spend hours arguing about the correct shade of red for a vintage Ferrari. Mike, in turn, spoke about Sarah, her love of photography, her terrible cooking, her unwavering belief in his abilities, even when he doubted himself. By the time they left the cafe, something fundamental had shifted. The awkwardness had dissipated, replaced by a new understanding and clarity of purpose. Mike deleted his resignation letter that night, committing fully to his role and to the partnership he and Diana were building. In the months that followed, their professional relationship flourished, built on a foundation of genuine respect and complementary strengths. Ted's rumors gradually lost power as the company's continued success under their leadership spoke louder than gossip. The board, impressed by the financial results and improved client relationships, extended Mike's contract with a substantial raise and expanded responsibilities. Mike's approach to management continued to evolve, blending technical expertise with growing business acumen. He initiated a comprehensive training program for promising mechanics, creating pathways for advancement that hadn't existed before. Under his guidance, the restoration division expanded into a significant profit center, attracting collectors from around the world. Diana, freed from the constant need to defend her technical decisions, focused more on strategic growth and industry relationships. Together, they positioned Morrison Group at the forefront of the luxury automotive sector, respected not just for the quality of their vehicles, but for the integrity of their operations. Emma and Olivia's friendship deepened, each girl bringing different perspectives to the other's life. Emma's practical approach and technical curiosity balanced Olivia's social sophistication and business instincts. They became inseparable companions, supporting each other through the challenges of adolescence and family dynamics. 1 year after Mike accepted the director position, Diana approached him with a new proposal, establishing the Morrison Technical Academy, a training center for aspiring automotive technicians with a particular focus on underserved communities. The concept aligned perfectly with Mike's belief in creating opportunities based on skill rather than connections. The academy quickly became his passion project, a way to formalize the mentoring he had always provided informally. The curriculum combined technical excellence with practical business skills, creating graduates who understood both the mechanical and commercial aspects of the industry. A scholarship program, funded by both Morrison Group and Mike personally, ensured that financial barriers wouldn't prevent talented students from attending. On the day of the Academy's grand opening, Mike stood at the podium, looking out at the inaugural class of apprentices. The facility, a state-of-the-art training center on the former site of his original garage, represented everything he believed in: opportunity, excellence, and integrity. Emma and Olivia sat in the front row, both wearing Morrison Academy t-shirts and beaming with pride. At 17, Olivia had developed a serious interest in automotive design, while 13-year-old Emma showed promise as a diagnostic specialist with an intuitive understanding of electronic systems that sometimes left even Mike baffled. Diana stood at the side of the stage, elegant as always, but more relaxed than she had been a year ago. The company had thrived under their partnership, expanding into new markets while maintaining the core values of excellence and integrity. Ted Simmons had eventually sold his shares and disappeared from their lives, his influence diminished and his rumors forgotten. As Mike concluded his speech, he offered the words that had become something of a personal motto: "Sometimes fixing a car can lead to fixing a life." The applause was warm and genuine. Afterward, as students and families mingled during the reception, Diana joined Mike, Emma, and Olivia. "Well done, Director Reynolds," she said with a smile. "You've built something remarkable here." "We built it," Mike corrected. "All of us." Diana nodded in acknowledgement, watching as Emma explained a complex diagnostic system to an impressed group of adult technicians. "They've both grown so much this year." Mike followed her gaze, pride swelling in his chest. "They have. Sometimes I can't believe how lucky we are." "Luck had little to do with it," Diana said softly. "You made a choice that night to help a stranger with a flat tire. Every good thing that's followed came from that single decision to do what was right, even when there was no apparent benefit to yourself." Mike considered this, remembering the path that had led him here, from struggling mechanic to executive, from isolated widower to part of an extended family that included Diana, Olivia, and the broader Morrison community. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "when Sarah died, I thought I'd never feel like I belonged anywhere again, that Emma and I would always be just surviving." "And now?" Diana asked. Mike smiled, watching Emma and Olivia laughing together, surrounded by the future they were all building. "Now I know better. Sometimes the things that seem broken beyond repair are just waiting for the right hands to fix them." Diana's eyes met his, warm with understanding and something more, a connection forged through shared values and mutual respect that had grown deeper with time. She didn't need to respond. The successful academy around them, the thriving company they led together, and the family they had formed spoke volumes. As they moved through the reception, greeting students and instructors, Mike reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought him here. From a chance encounter on a dark street to a new beginning he could never have imagined. Life, like the most complex engine, sometimes required only the right adjustments to run beautifully again.